This has Rams fans split. New offensive coordinator Nate Scheelhaase has some interesting words when describing how he plans to use his tight end room heading into this NFL season, what this means for the Rams offense, all that and more on today's episode of a Rams Digest. And welcome back to another episode of a Rams Digest. I'm your host, Joshua Finehirsh. And before we get into today's video, make sure to hit that like button right now for the Rams to go on a Super Bowl run for the 2026 season. And make sure to hit that subscribe button. We are now just under 200 subscribers away from hitting our goal of 6,000 subscribers. So click that notification bell as well. Click all so you get notified and never miss whenever we post our daily new Rams Digest video content pieces covering all the things Rams. Got a lot of big things coming for this upcoming regular season. And share this video with a friend because it helps out the channel a lot. But we have to get into today's story, which is new offensive coordinator Nate Scheelhaase, during his media availability earlier today, spoke about how he plans to use his tight end room because it was so effective for this Rams team last year. But it's not really the answer that a lot of Rams fans, including myself, were expecting. So we're going to get to what Coach Scheelhaase had to say right now. No, I don't expect anyone in particular to come out on top, Scheelhaase told reporters. I think those guys push each other and challenge each other and are so versatile that you're just excited to see who ends up coming to life based on what the defense wants to do. We can move those guys all around the field. They can all do so much, both in the run game and the pass game, that you're excited just based on the game plan. And this is from new Rams offensive coordinator Nate Scheelhaase. Now, I certainly get what Scheelhaase is trying to say here in terms of how he believes that this tight end room is very versatile, and I do agree with that, but I do think with this new Rams offense, I think their goal is to find a receiver 3, because Colby Parkinson kind of turned into that last year, but I think their main goal is to have one of these younger wide receivers really come out on top. Early in camp, it looks like CJ Daniels has been playing very, very well in terms of that position battle, but overall, I do think you would want Terrence Ferguson to take that next step because I think he has the highest potential out of anyone in that group. Yes, Colby Parkinson's a veteran. You know what you're going to get. He's going to be a nice, steady, reliable presence. Higbee's a little older, kind of more of a mentor at this point, more so of just a run blocker. And then Davis Allen, in my opinion, might even get cut. I don't think they should keep 5 tight ends. I just don't really see a role for Davis Allen because, again, Max Blair, a guy that was just drafted, I think has more potential than Davis Allen. But Terrence Ferguson's the guy to me that I've said they might just convert him to a receiver just because of the amount of tight ends they have. But he is such a unique player at this tight end position that I would just love to see him take that step and become the Rams tight end 1. And you could still throw in different guys for your tight end game plan, and you can still have a number 1. Both realities can still happen, but I just think there should be a clear-cut number 1 guy that the rest of the room kind of follows after. Higbee's more so of your emotional leader, but you also need a play leader on the field. I don't think Higbee's that anymore, and I think they should turn to Ferguson for that role. But Scheelhaase did have some more to say that we're going to get into right now. You don't know who ends up popping and making a play in the pass game. You don't know who ends up being at the point of attack in the run game. That makes a huge difference. I just appreciate how those guys work and how they've pushed each other to get to where they're at right now. And this is also from Nate Scheelhaase. And again, not a bad thing. The guys are pushing each other into being better players, more versatile players. I do like all that. But all that stuff still can happen while having a number 1 tight end option, knowing who your security blanket is. Because as a quarterback, a lot of tight ends, a lot of at least the above average starting caliber tight ends are guys who can be, safety blankets for quarterbacks. Again, guys like Travis Kelce, that's an all-time great in his prime. We're not going to talk about that. George Kittle as well, or guys like Brock Bowers and Trent McBride who look to be on the path to being all-time greats. But look at a guy like Sam Laporta. He's just been good for Jared Goff for a few years now. He's just been an above-average tight end, a guy who can be used as a security blanket, has some versatility. Again, Dallas Goedert as well in Philadelphia, not an all-time great, but just an above-average starter, and he's a guy who becomes a security blanket for Jalen Hurts and Jake Ferguson in Dallas, Dalton Schultz in Houston, guys like that, guys who aren't necessarily jumping off the page stats-wise, but they're guys who are number 1 tight ends who you can rely on, and you can win games with them, win playoff games with them as your number 1 tight end. And I think the Rams need to differentiate the wide receiver 3 role from the tight end 1 role and the tight end 1 role from everyone else in terms of targets, because I think Terrence Ferguson, again, blocking-wise, might limit him from playing the most snaps overall, but I do want to see him get the most targets overall in the pass game because he has by far the most diverse route tree of any tight end on this Rams roster currently, or fighting to make the roster currently as well. And speaking of Terrence Ferguson, just going into him here for a little bit, again, didn't necessarily play too much last year. Started off with some injuries, ended with some injuries, started off with some DMP coaches' decisions, if we're talking NBA box score terms here. But he didn't do too much stats-wise, but he flashed a ton of potential if we go into his stats here from last year, as we get those loaded up for you right now. As Terrence Ferguson, last year, again, didn't necessarily play a whole lot, but he did get 14 games of action, only 11 catches, 231 yards, 3 touchdowns on 25 targets, with 21 yards per catch, which that will not be sustainable. It'll probably go down to about 14 or 15, but it'll still be a good field stretcher. 9 receiving first downs in those limited targets, which ranked in the top 50, and 0 receiving fumbles. He's got good size, 6'5", 252, just 23 years old, entering year 2, so I have a lot of high hopes for Terrence Ferguson heading into year number 2 as a Ram. I think he's a guy that can open up the field and be even a 50-50 ball threat downfield that the Rams don't really have, because Devontae is not that guy anymore. Puka can do it from time to time, but we know that's not where he excels in his game, which is okay. And the Rams, again, CJ Daniels can be that guy in the future, but as a rookie, you don't necessarily want to rely on him right now to do that. And I think Terrence Ferguson is a guy who can give you that, again, being a tight end 1, just being 1 on the depth chart, or just being a starter. I'd at least like to see if he doesn't want to name a tight end 1 Scheelhaase, fine, you don't have to, because at the end of the day, it's a numbers thing, so fine. But I do think you need consistent starters out there. If you're running 12 personnel, I think you need a consistent 2 where it's like, these are the 2 that are the most effective, that are going to run it the most. And I think for Terrence Ferguson to become that guy that we all know he can be, he needs to become a much more effective blocker heading into year 2, which I certainly think he can and will do heading into this season. And now we do also need to talk about the Rams tight end 1 from last year, which is Colby Parkinson. Parkinson had a career season last year at the tight end position, and again, there were some rumors, including me, that where I thought that he was a trade candidate. I know both Josh and I made some videos earlier in the offseason about his contract being around that $8 million mark, and the Rams maybe getting a mid-round pick back for him to get him off the books, but they have not done that. Again, it's still training camp, so we'll see if a team, unfortunately, we're not going with it doesn't happen, but unfortunately injuries do happen, and a team may need a tight end, and the Rams get a good package for him. They still might move him. That's not a rumor. That's just something I'm thinking about, but we both made videos about him being moved, not because he was bad, because they didn't want to pay him, but the fact that he's still here, I still would like to see him used in the offense. And as I said, he did have a career season last year, especially in the red zone as well. And for Colby Parkinson, played in 15 games, 43 catches, 408 yards, 8 touchdowns ranked in the top 5, 56 targets, 9.49 yards per catch, 24 receiving first downs, ranked 33rd. He did have 1 fumble. He did have some drop issues as the year went on as well. He has great size at 6'7", 266, going into year 7 at age 27. So again, there's a lot to like about Colby Parkinson's game heading into this NFL season, and I do think it is important to note that he had that 8 touchdown season. Again, that was 3rd on the team in passing touchdowns, and that's just not gonna, go away. I think Colby Parkinson's a guy they can rely on because Devontae is getting older. I highly doubt you're going to be using him as much as he did last year. The Rams, I did a video on this a few weeks ago, set a record in terms of targets inside the 5 to Devontae Adams last season. And while he is great in the red zone and inside the 5, he is getting older, and he had some injury issues to end last year, so you need other guys to step up in the red zone. Ferguson's going to be one of those guys, but I think Colby Parkinson as well is another one of those guys. To me, these two, Parkinson being a good blocker as well, offsets Ferguson. That I do think these two should be your starting tight ends, and I think are ahead of everyone else in the TE room. And it's what I would want to see as a Rams fan, just in terms of getting, your offense flowing. You need to have a consistent rotation. Again, some things might change based on game plan if you go 13 personnel, but overall, I think those are the 2 most effective tight ends in your room. But I do want to see Terrence Ferguson take the step that I know he can make. And I really hope these comments that Scheelhaase made aren't an indictment on how Terrence Ferguson has been playing in camp, that he hasn't really separated himself the way that a lot of Rams fans and probably the Rams organization has wanted him to so far. And now moving on to the veteran guy in not Colby Parkinson, in Tyler Higbee. Now, Tyler Higbee is much more of in that mentorship role of his career, but it is important to talk about the stats that he had last season as we get those up for you here right now. He only played in 10 games. Again, he's been injury-riddled the last few years. 25 catches, 281 yards, 3 touchdowns, 36 targets, 11.24 yards per catch, 17 first downs, 0 receiving fumbles. Again, good size, 6'6", 253, entering year 11 at age 33. Again, he's a guy who did consider retirement after last season. He has come back on a cheaper contract, and I do think we are getting towards the end of the Tyler Higbee arc in LA and probably for his career as a whole. Again, he's meant a lot to this Rams organization, was a key part in both of the teams that made the Super Bowl, obviously the team that won in 2021 as well. So again, he's a guy that I love, a lot of people around the locker room love, but again, in terms of keeping you fresh for the full season, he's probably going to be your TE3, maybe even your TE4. Again, I don't think this quote really has anything to do with Higbee. I think it's Higbee more so pushing people to be better in terms of his leadership on and off the field, just him being a veteran and the younger guys in the room being able to go to him for advice and learn from him as well. And speaking of a young guy who can go to him for advice, the Rams actually drafted a tight end again this year in round 2, because Parkinson's a free agent after this year. Higbee might retire, in Max Clare. Now, this pick definitely was kind of a surprise, just like the Ty Simpson pick was to Josh and I, and like many other Rams fans out there, but it's a pick that might pay dividends later on, especially a couple years down the line, where you think that Ferguson and Clare are your tight ends of the future. But if we do look at Clare's stats at Ohio State, before he went to the NFL this year, he transferred from Purdue. He's 23 years old, he's 6'4", 246, again, a bit of a smaller tight end, only 23 though. He had 43 catches for 448 yards and 2 touchdowns, averaged 10.4 yards per catch. So again, nothing really spectacular really jumps off the page to you about Max Clare. Again, I think it's just because they picked him in the second round, they're going to want to use him a little bit. Again, probably won't play too much just because he's a rookie, but he does have more potential than Davis Allen in my eyes. That's why I'm saying Davis Allen's probably a cut candidate, because he dropped some passes in that playoff run that didn't really thrill me. So I think those are really the 4 that are going to get a lot of the run. And again, I hope Terrence Ferguson is able to differentiate and separate himself as a TE1. But after learning all of this, obviously, Nate Scheelhaase wants to keep using these tight ends. That's pretty much what the main takeaway should be from these quotes, is that the tight ends are going to continue to be used in a similar way than how they were last year. That are going to keep seeing the 12-13 personnel. The Rams offense was amazing the more they used it throughout the year. So again, I think they're going to switch up the game plans a little bit on those formations, as Scheelhaase was saying, about the versatility. But that also shouldn't mean sacrificing the development of Terrence Ferguson. I just hope that's not what he means. And that it is a team effort. I get all that. I'm for that. But I still think Terrence Ferguson can get those targets despite there being more so of a team effort on the tight end side of things, because Ferguson's route tree is just that much better than everyone else's in the room. And then also for Sean McVay talked a lot about how Terrence Ferguson, his improvement, what it's going to mean for the offense heading into this season. And I hope he hasn't really backtracked on that either, because we heard last year Sean McVay say, hey, Terrence still works some things out blocking-wise, scheme-wise. That's why he's not really getting on the field. But we saw him in big moments, especially on some third downs, come up with some key catches late in the season. The moment wasn't too big for him. He made some great plays, absolutely mossing that 49ers defender in the second matchup of the season between the Rams and Niners. So I can tell, and the Rams can tell, that there's a lot of potential there. I think this year, coming into camp healthy, put together some good practices and become that TE1 and diversify your game, become a better blocker so you could stay on the field for more run snaps as well and be a true tight end 1 for this McVay and Scheelhaase-led offense. But now, as always, I want to hear from you all in the comments down below. I will be responding as always. Do you agree with Nate that versatility is more important than finding a number 1 tight end? Comment down below why for yes and for no. To me, it's a no, because you could still be versatile while having a number one tight end. Like, if you think about two tight end offenses, like, a lot of times they're still versatile. They're still able to change up their formations, but you can still have a number one guy. As, again, a guy like Terrence Ferguson who stretches the field, has a diverse route tree, just things that other tight ends in your room don't really have, and bring your offense to another level while still having the blocking of a Colby Parkinson, of a Tyler Higbee out there, that I definitely think you could still run the ball effectively with your 12-13 personnel and pass the ball effectively while changing up your game plan a little bit from last year on both of those personnel systems, just so that the defense doesn't, telegraph it and predict what's coming. I still think all that's possible with a tight end one. And what do you think this means for this second-year tight end Terrence Ferguson? Leave your thoughts down below in the comments. To me, it means that he should still be developing, but I also think it means that the blocking hasn't come along just yet to where they want it to. But I do think it will by the end of the season. And I think by the end of the season, even if it's not in the beginning, Terrence Ferguson will be that tight end one. Make sure to leave your thoughts down below in the comments. I'll be responding as always. And that is all for today's episode of Rams Digest. Make sure to leave a like on today's video right now for the Rams to go on a Super Bowl run for the 2026 season. And make sure to hit that subscribe button. We're on the road to 6K, 6,000 subscribers, just under 200 away. Click that sub button and click that notification bell as well. Click all so you get notified and never miss whenever we post our daily new Rams Digest video content pieces covering all things Rams. And we got some big things coming this regular season, so make sure to stay tuned. Leave your thoughts down below on today's video in the comments. I will be responding as always, and send this video to a friend. It helps out the channel a lot. I've been your host, Joshua Finehirsh, as always. Thank you very much for watching another episode of Rams Digest. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you soon for another one, and have a great rest of your day.